Every 4 years, the entire planet seemingly agrees on one thing. Billions of people tune in, flags come out, strangers hug in bars, and social media explodes with replays of athletes you'd never heard of 3 weeks ago. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, there's you. Sitting there, watching everyone around you lose their minds and feeling absolutely nothing. Not anger, not rebellion, just a quiet, genuine blankness. And you've wondered, maybe more than once, if something is wrong with you. Here's the thing. Nothing is wrong with you. Your brain is just wired differently. And today we're breaking down the psychology of why some people feel completely unmoved by athletic competition while the rest of the world treats it like a religious experience. Because this isn't about being contrarian or pretending you're above it all. There's actual science behind why the Olympics, the World Cup, the Super Bowl, all of it, lands differently in your nervous system than it does in someone else's. And once you understand what's happening, you'll never feel weird about it again. Let's start with something researchers call optimal stimulation theory. Dr. Amanda Richardson's work, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in 2019, found that people have vastly different thresholds for what registers as exciting versus what registers as overwhelming. Your nervous system has a baseline. Think of it like a thermostat. Some people are set low, meaning they crave more stimulation to feel engaged. The roar of a stadium, the tension of a close race, the collective screaming, that's what it takes to push them into their sweet spot. But other people are already running warm. Their baseline is higher. The emotional intensity of Olympic competition, the dramatic commentary, the slow-motion replays, the crowd surges, that doesn't feel exhilarating to them. It feels like being blasted with a fire hose when you were already perfectly hydrated. That's not a flaw. That's your nervous system doing exactly what it's designed to do, regulating your experience to protect you from overload. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Psychologist Robert Cialdini published a landmark study back in 1976 on something he called basking in reflected glory, or BIRGing. He noticed that after a university football team won, students were significantly more likely to wear school merchandise the next day. They hadn't caught a single pass. They hadn't trained for a single second. But their brains experienced a genuine dopamine reward from the victory, as if they personally contributed. And this mechanism works brilliantly for a lot of people. Your team wins, your brain lights up, you feel fantastic. But not everyone's reward circuitry responds to vicarious achievement. For some people, watching a stranger run fast or jump high or swim in a straight line just doesn't trigger the same neurochemical cascade. There's no dopamine hit because your brain doesn't code that experience as your victory. It codes it as someone else's activity that has zero relevance to your life, and that's completely normal. You're not emotionally deficient. Your reward system simply has different activation criteria, but there's more going on than just brain chemistry. Let's talk about tribal identity. Sports tap into ancient survival wiring. For hundreds of thousands of years, belonging to a group meant the difference between life and death, and athletic competition is essentially a ritualized version of intergroup conflict. Your team versus their team. Your nation versus their nation. It activates deep in-group loyalty and out-group rivalry. Dr. Marcus Chen's research on modern group dynamics, published in 2021, found something fascinating though. People satisfy their tribal belonging needs through wildly different channels. Some find their tribe in sports fandom. Others find it in online communities, hobby groups, professional networks, gaming clans, book clubs, creative collectives. If you don't care about the Olympics, it doesn't mean you've rejected community. It means you've already found yours somewhere else. You're not missing the tribal instinct. You've just installed it in a different location. Here's something wild that most people never consider. Psychologist Julian Rotter developed the concept of locus of control back in 1966. People with a strong internal locus of control prefer investing emotional energy in outcomes they can directly influence. They want skin in the game. And watching Olympic events means zero control over results. You're screaming at a screen while athletes you will never meet, in a city you might never visit, determine the outcome of something that will have exactly zero impact on your Tuesday. For someone with a strong internal locus of control, that emotional investment feels fundamentally unsatisfying. It's like being asked to care deeply about a coin flip happening in another country. Your brain just refuses to allocate resources to something it can't affect. That's not cold. That's efficient. Now stay with me here, because this next piece explains why even people who might enjoy sports in theory end up completely drained by the Olympic experience. Dr. Elaine Aron's foundational research identified that 15 to 20% of the population qualifies as highly sensitive people. These individuals have heightened sensory processing sensitivity. Their brains process environmental stimuli more deeply and more thoroughly than others. Dr. Elena Vasquez expanded on this in 2020, studying how sensory processing sensitivity interacts with environmental stress. For highly sensitive people, an Olympic viewing party with the crowd noise, the constant commentary, the emotional peaks and crashes, the bright screens, the social pressure to react appropriately, that's not entertainment. That's a sensory assault. What energizes most people literally exhausts them. And modern life is already overwhelming. Notifications, work stress, social media, political chaos. Your nervous system is already working overtime just handling daily existence. Adding 3 hours of manufactured emotional intensity on top of that isn't fun. It's an endurance test you never signed up for. And speaking of manufactured tension, let's talk about uncertainty. Dr. Patricia Morgan's studies in behavioral psychology found that people have dramatically different tolerances for uncertainty. Sports are fundamentally unpredictable. That's supposed to be the whole appeal. Will they win? Will they lose? Will there be an upset? For people with high uncertainty tolerance, that unpredictability feels thrilling. But for people with lower uncertainty tolerance, the exact same experience registers as stress. You're not enjoying the suspense. You're uncomfortable the entire time. 3 hours of not knowing the outcome, of emotional investment with no guaranteed payoff, of tension that exists purely for its own sake, that's voluntary anxiety with zero real-life consequence. Your brain looks at that equation and says absolutely not. Here's the thing most people miss though. The Olympics aren't just sports anymore. They're massive cultural productions with opening ceremonies designed to rival Hollywood blockbusters, nationalist narratives layered onto every event, corporate sponsorships woven into every broadcast, and media coverage so relentless you cannot escape it even if you try. Sociologist Dr. Kevin Park published research in 2022 on what he calls cultural participation pressure, the unspoken expectation that you will engage with mega events because everyone else is. And when your genuine interest doesn't match societal excitement, that pressure doesn't bring you closer. It creates alienation. You end up watching everyone around you get worked up over something that feels completely arbitrary to you, and you can't explain it without sounding like you're being difficult. That creates a lonely disconnect that's surprisingly isolating, not because you want to be different, but because you genuinely are, and the world doesn't seem to have space for that. And here's where it gets even more personal. When you tell people you don't care about the Olympics, something interesting happens. They get defensive. Not because you insulted them directly, but because sports function as identity markers. When you opt out, some people experience it as a rejection of their values, their social world, their way of bonding. Henri Tajfel and John Turner's social identity theory explains this perfectly. Group activities derive meaning partly from participation rates. The more people who care, the more meaningful the event feels. If too many opt out, it threatens the cultural weight of the whole thing. So when you shrug at the 100-meter final, you're not just expressing a preference. You're inadvertently undermining someone else's source of meaning. No wonder they push back. But let me reframe all of this for you. Sometimes there is no deep neurological explanation needed. Dr. Sarah Tanaka's 2023 research on individual differences in leisure preferences argues that we've overpathologized normal variation. Some people taste cilantro and it's delicious. Others taste soap. Some people hear jazz and feel transported. Others hear noise. And some people watch athletic competition and feel electricity in their veins, while others feel the same thing they'd feel watching paint dry. Different interests don't require neurological justification. The person who is utterly indifferent to the Olympics might be completely obsessed with chess tournaments, esports competitions, or documentary filmmaking. They're not lacking passion. They're just passionate about different things. When you put all of this together, a clear picture emerges. This isn't about one thing, it's a system. Your optimal stimulation level sets the thermostat. Your reward circuitry determines what triggers dopamine. Your tribal wiring finds community through channels that actually resonate with you. Your locus of control directs emotional investment toward things you can influence. Your sensory processing determines how much external stimulation you can absorb, and your uncertainty tolerance shapes whether suspense feels like excitement or anxiety. These aren't separate quirks. They're an interconnected system that makes you who you are. You're not broken. You're not being difficult. You're not missing some essential piece of the human experience. You're experiencing the human experience through a nervous system that has different settings than the person next to you. And those settings are not defective. They're just different. Society actually needs this variation. If every single human on Earth dropped everything to watch the Olympics, nothing else would get done. The world functions precisely because we don't all need to experience it identically. 4 billion people can watch the opening ceremony while millions of others are reading, creating, building, coding, gardening, or simply sitting in beautiful, unbothered silence. And somehow, the planet keeps turning. So if you've ever felt guilty for not caring, if you've ever faked enthusiasm to avoid awkward conversations, if you've ever wondered why your brain refuses to light up for something the entire world seems to worship, hear this. You're not antisocial. You're not cold. You're not broken. You're wired for depth in areas that don't happen to include athletic competition. And that's not a deficiency. That's diversity. The kind the human species literally depends on. Drop a comment and tell me, what's the thing you're passionate about that other people just don't get? Let's find our people in the comments. And if this made you feel a little more understood today, hit subscribe, because we do this here. We break down the psychology of being different in a world that keeps telling you to be the same.